Stream Elements said, a dog door is now live. Streaming DCS World, 56 OG practice.
Now that you know how to take off and land safely, we need to learn how to get where we're going in between. Most real-world missions will have preloaded waypoints to guide you, but for the remainder of this section of the course, we're going to practice our data entry skills by manually entering waypoints into the navigation system. This serves a twofold purpose. First, it forces us to become familiar with the data entry process and various GPS coordinate formats, and second, it gets us ready for the true purpose of GPS data entry, precision bombing. Of course, we're not quite ready to start dropping bombs just yet, so we'll have to settle for flying between waypoints. For this afternoon's flight, we're going to go visit the ground attack training range so you can become familiar with the area. We're obviously not going to get much accomplished cold and dark, so go ahead and get the aircraft started up and we'll learn how to enter waypoints. Now that you know how to take off and land safely, we need to learn how to get where we're going in between. Most real-world missions will have preloaded waypoints to guide you, but for the remainder of this section of the course, we're going to practice our data entry skills by manually entering waypoints into the navigation system. This serves a twofold purpose. First, it forces us to become familiar with the data entry process and various GPS coordinate formats, and second, it gets us ready for the true purpose of GPS data entry, precision bombing. Of course, we're not quite ready to start dropping bombs just yet, so we'll have to settle for flying between waypoints. For this afternoon's flight, We're going to go visit the ground attack training range so you can become familiar with the area. We're obviously not going to get much accomplished cold and dark, so go ahead and get the aircraft started up and we'll learn how to enter waypoints.
Roll left, roll left. Flight controls, flight controls.
Vader said, "I know Kung Fu."
The voice back. Okay, can't I use my control?
All right, Keanu.
This day, what's going on?
What you up to?
Well, I thought I'd try and do some more of the what's it called? F-18, that single player mission, but I'm struggling. Drewsby 9. Because I don't seem to be able to recenter my headset. Yeah, it's the
Campaign?
no. Just this mission. Waypoint coordinates, blah 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 blah. But I don't seem to be able to access controls. What's the trouble?
Training blocks.
Yeah, training blocks, correct.
What are you learning?
GPS targeting, navigation.
Syntax underscore DCS said, Numpad 5 usually lets you center your view.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it's like some. I wonder if
Numpad
there's like
5.
a window that's got like focus somewhere. No, it doesn't do it. Dust controls. Interact. Will it pick up? That doesn't have any access commands. I think I'm going to restart. No bueno.
Vader said, UI layer. Reset for our view.
Yeah, well, like it's wiped all of my controls, so I'm just going to quit and come back in again. I think something is blocked. Fully quit. Doesn't die. I see you've been smashing the carrier landing.
Is it
Vader.
easy to turn off the mod we installed for DLSS?
Mod we installed for DLSS. I mean, I think every time DCS updates, it removes it. So, yeah, I'm not sure that it's. I think it is relatively easy. I think you just restore it to defaults. I think. Okay. If you've lost all of my settings, I'm going to be very unhappy.
DC is updated today.
Ah, well then you're probably on default because it resets all that every time. So whatever settings you make in the loadout, yeah, it should wipe all of that other stuff, I think, because it injects the DLL into the main executable folder, I do believe. Adjust controls. What the hell? Why have I lost all of my access commands? Oh, not. There's something there. They're back. Hey, what if I hit Moser? Center view. So weird that happened. We're good.
Now that you know how to take off and land safely, we need to learn how to get where we're going in between. Most real-world missions will have preloaded waypoints to guide you, but for the remainder of this section of the course, we're going to practice our data entry skills by manually entering waypoints into the navigation system. This serves a twofold purpose. First, it forces us to become familiar with the data entry process and various GPS coordinate formats, and second, it gets us ready for the true purpose of GPS data entry, precision bombing. Of course, we're not quite ready to start dropping bombs just yet, so we'll have to settle for flying between waypoints. For this afternoon's flight, we're going to go visit the ground attack training range so you can become familiar with the area. We're obviously not going to get much accomplished cold and dark, so go ahead and get the aircraft started up and we'll learn how to enter waypoints.
Roll left, roll left. Flight controls. Flight controls.
Okay, let's get started with some data entry. I find that it's easiest to use the right MDI for data entry because all the buttons you'll use the most are located close together, but it's up to you. Do what you're most comfortable with. Also, you should be getting pretty familiar with the cockpit by this point, so I won't be hand-holding you with individual button presses anymore. You'll remember where everything is a lot better if you have to look for it yourself. In order to let me know that you've moved on to the next step, I'll ask you to press the IP push button in the top left of the UFC panel to signal me that you've completed the last instruction provided and I can move on to the next step. Let's test that out now by pressing the IP button. Perfect. The first thing we need to do is get to the data page of the HSI. Go ahead and open up the HSI on one of the MDIs and then press the push button for data. This is where most of the work is going to be done today. As you can see, there are a set of coordinates already listed on the screen. This is the current location of the aircraft, which is listed as waypoint 0 by default. Although it isn't strictly required, we're going to go ahead and get into the habit of adding waypoints to sequence 1 prior to entering the actual coordinates. This way we won't forget to do it later, which would make coupling the autopilot to the navigation impossible. Let's start by pressing the SEQ-UFC push button, then on the UFC menu press the INS push button, enter a value of 1 on the number pad, then press the enter key. Alright, Now that we've added waypoint 1 to the sequence, we need to actually put coordinates in. There are 4 types of coordinate systems we'll be learning today: lat-long normal, lat-long precise, lat-long decimal, and finally MGRS. The first of these is the simplest, but also the least accurate. Lat-long normal is great for general navigation waypoints that don't require pinpoint precision. They consist of a simple 6-digit number that provides latitude and longitude in values of degrees, minutes, and seconds. For example, our first waypoint is North 41 40 43 East 45 29 06 2,451 feet. The first letter of each line indicates the hemisphere of that 6-digit coordinate. We're in the north and east hemispheres, or northeast hemisphere. The first pair of numbers tells you what degree of latitude or longitude you're at, the next pair are the minutes, and the last pair are seconds. What does that mean to you in the cockpit? Not much, honestly, but that's how maps work. The last line is the elevation at those coordinates in feet, which isn't really required for... The aircraft likely started in decimal mode, so we're going to have to switch that before entering the code. Press the A/C button to bring up the configuration menu, then if you see lat-long decimal in the bottom right, press it so it changes to lat-long seconds. Then go back to the waypoint screen. To enter the first waypoint, first make sure you're on the correct waypoint by pressing the up and down arrows to select waypoint 1, then press the UFC push button. Move over to the UFC menu and press the POSN button. To enter the coordinates, you first need to tell the UFC which hemisphere you're entering, and the 2, 4, 6, and 8 buttons have direction indicators on them that you press before entering the 6-digit coordinates. So to enter the first line, you press 2 for north, then type out 414053 and press the enter key. Now press 6 for east and enter the appropriate 6 digits for that coordinate, 452906, and press enter. Lastly, enter the elevation information by pressing the ELEV button, typing in the value provided, 2451, verifying that you're using the correct unit of measurement, feet, and pressing enter to store the waypoint. Not too complicated, but also not very useful for anything but navigation. If we're going to drop bombs using GPS, we're going to need something quite a bit more precise, and this is where the first of the precise modes comes in. To use this, we need to put the system in the correct mode by pressing the precise push button at the bottom of the display.
Are you free, Bet?
As you can see, the simpler coordinates we were looking at a minute ago just got a bit more complex, but for a good reason. This allows us to get pinpoint accuracy by splitting up the normal coordinates, which cover a much larger area, into smaller chunks by using decimals. The process for entering these is exactly the same as before, except for one additional step, but before we can get to that we need to remember to add waypoint 2 as part of the sequence, so press SEQUFC, INS, 2, enter. Then be sure to advance the system to waypoint 2 with the up arrow. Once that's done, refer to the mission briefing in the menu or the mission card in your kneeboard to get the coordinates for waypoint 2, then go ahead and press the UFC button and enter the part of the north coordinate you know how to do, everything before the decimal point, and press enter.
Damn it.